Hey guys, Professor Mike here, and in this video we're going to take a look at how to create your very first walk cycle inside of Maya. We're actually going to be using a character called Norman. It's one of the more commonly used rigs, free downloadable character, and I will leave a link in the description so you know where to go and download him for yourselves. Alright, so once you get the download and you've extracted the folder, we're going to take and just drag and drop character Norman into the Maya scene file. And one of the first things we want to do, always want to do, is come in here to Project Window and create a new window. And I'll just call this Walk Demo. And let's see, where do we want this saved to? I'll just throw it to the desktop for now. And we'll go ahead and save our scene just to have that situated as well. I'll just call this Walk 01. And let's get started. So with Norman, when you bring him in, you're not going to see all of his controls right from the start. So what we want to do is go ahead and turn them on. To do so, we're going to come down here to this Viz control here on the ground. And in our channel box up in the top right hand corner, we're going to make all of these attributes here a value of 1. Now we don't necessarily need the facial controls currently, as we're going to be just generating a walk cycle from scratch here, but towards the end we might actually want to get into them. So you could choose whether or not you want to have that on or off, but for the walking itself we don't really need it. Next up, we're going to turn on IK for Norman's legs. To do so, we're going to grab both of these EX controls, both for the left and right leg, and the FKIK in your channel box here, this attribute, we're going to make a value of 1. What that will do is create an IK control for the leg, so you can move the entire leg with just one control essentially. We also have his pole vectors, these two icons right here, which will help delegate the rotation or angle of the knee. So for instance, if I lift the knee up and move this over to the side, you know, riding a horse or riding a motorcycle, something cool like that, you would be able to move the knees accordingly. The arms themselves we're going to leave in FK mode. The rule of thumb I always use is, use FK if you're not interacting with something, and then if you are interacting with something, or literally anything, then you're going to want to use IK. So for this too, we're going to go to Show and turn off Joints. That's to negate us accidentally selecting a joint and keyframing it. We only want to be setting keyframes on the actual controls themselves. Let's get into the walk cycle now. So what we're going to do is set this to 48. I'm going to do a 48 frame walk cycle at 24 frames per second. You'll also notice if you're on a fresh install and you haven't practiced, you may need to go into your playback speed, double check and make sure that that is on 24 frames times 1 instead of the play every frame option. Okay. The play every frame options for dynamic simulations and things of that nature, which we're not going to be utilizing right now. Next up, we're going to actually start off in the legs. So right here, we're going to move one forward and one back and initiate, or basically get our starting pose for our legs in order. For the center of gravity, or the cog control here, we're going to take and just move it down so that we have a slight bend in both of our knees. I'll just move this back a little bit more, and there we go. So the next thing is to establish just a little bit of overlap. We don't want to walk shoulder width apart, so I'm going to bring them in. I'm actually using the grid line down the center to help me establish that. You could also rotate if you'd like to give some angle to the legs as well, or to the feet rather. So we'll do something like that. And then there's our initial pose. We're going to take both the left and the right, hit S to set a key. Frame 48, because this is going to be a looping walk cycle, needs to be the same, so we're going to hit S there as well. And then halfway 24 is going to be the opposite, so I'm going to move one back and one forward. And as I'm doing this too, you'll notice I'm not punching in numbers. I just want it to do it randomly. If you start pumping in numbers like, oh, I noticed this one is 4.491, take this one 4.491, not exactly what you want to do. You do want them similar but not exact, otherwise you'll end up with very robotic movements. Alright, so foot in the back. This is where our heel is going to peel up off the ground. So in our channel box up in the top, we're going to take our ball roll, and I'm holding down Control and middle mouse dragging to turn that on. Find a nice pose, something that looks good to me. I'll also move the leg back a little bit, and we'll update that keyframe by hitting S. Anytime you update the first key, make sure you do so to the last so that you maintain the loop of the cycle. Let's just deal with the right leg for right now. As the leg is moving forward, we obviously want it to lift up off the ground and pass. And that would be our passing pose if you were to draw this in 2D. So the ball roll, we're going to actually go in a negative value, rotate it downward, and I'll move the leg up. And again, just little tweaks here and there just to make it look nice, and making sure that our toe does not cross through the grid line down on the ground. If you'd like, you can go ahead and just create a simple disc, scale that up. I would also just put it onto its own layer so that you can make it just a reference. That way you're not accidentally selecting it as you go. And really there's no need for the grid at this point, so I'll turn that off. But that's just to check and see if we have any interpenetration with the ground plane as we're generating our movement. During the pass too, we want to make sure we're not tripping ourselves, right? So we're going to move our leg outward. Also like to give it a little bit of rotational value here as well. And now we're lifting up off the ground. Now here we're going in toe into the ground, and typically if I do that, especially like on carpet or something, you're going to end up tripping. So a couple frames, I'll go with like 4. Prior to the land, we're going to rotate, and we'll also do the same sort of thing. Turn on the ball roll and rotate and get that foot, or the toe rather, up off the ground. So he comes down heel first, and that's a little bit over exaggerated, but hopefully gets the point across of what needs to happen for the leg. And then from 24 to 48, as we watch, you can see the heels picking up off the ground prior to us passing the center of gravity. So around 36, really, we want to make sure that our ball roll is still at 0. So I'm going to update 36 as well. And other things to check for that I see common mistakes is, when you're sliding back, you don't want to slide back at an angle. Like as an example, if I had this out here, you can see that there's this slide back angle, and that's going to basically break the illusion we're trying to create of walking in place. All right, so there we go. 1 foot down, let's go to the left. This one, as we slide back, we want to maintain it being flat, so I'll just go ahead and set a key on 12. 24, we're going to take the ball roll and turn it on, and I'll probably move this back a little bit as well. So what's happening is the IK goes from the hip to the ankle, and if you lift the heel up off the ground, you're decreasing the distance here as well. So I'm just sliding it back a little bit to update that, because the ball roll is turned on in this point. All right, so as we come forward, again, we're going to lift up off the ground. You have a little bit of rotational value, and I like to go exaggerated with this too and exaggerate the overlap follow through. So to do that, we're going to give it an arc right here as it's passing. You imagine inertia is coming from left to right in this foot, and it's hitting the lower appendages of the foot, and it's pushing that area back. All right, and as we come forward again, we don't want to stub our foot into the ground, so we'll rotate it, and we'll go to our ball roll and turn that on, and just a little bit of adjustment here as well. And we're going to come down heel first. There we go. And we go ahead and hit play. There we go. But we're going to be tripping ourselves right there. On 36, we need to bring it out away so that we're not tripping up on ourselves, and just double check ourselves there. And maybe just a little bit of angle here as well. And there we go. So we got legs. All right, let's move up into the hips, into the waist. So a couple things I like to do here, but the first thing I like to do is establish the rotational values, and then we'll establish some up and down. So the rotational values here on frame 1, our left leg is forward, so that means that the left hip is going to be up and forward. All right, 1 and last are the same. 24 is the opposite, and for this I like to zero out the rotational values so we're sort of starting fresh when we do that. I popped into component mode by accident there. So we're going to lift the right hip up and go forward with it, and that's pretty much the rotational value you can see. So he's kind of teetering back and forth, but we'll handle that as we go up through the spine of the character as well. All right, so 1, 24, and 48. The hips are actually going to be lowered to the ground just due to the fact that basically when our legs are furthest apart, our hips are lower towards the ground. It's like if you were to do a split, your hips would be way down here, and you would also be taking me to the hospital. Let's go with frame 12. On frame 12, apologize for that. On frame 12, we're going to lift up, key, and on 36, we're going to lift up and key as well. Make sure not to go too high up because you will end up with a pop in the knee due to the IK and the nature of the IK controls. It's one major thing you want to avoid at all costs when you do your walk cycles. So there's our legs, our hips. Let's move up through the spine. So just to keep this quick, I'll grab all 3 of them. It looks like many are selected, but there's also, again, like a hierarchy in place. So if I grab the top one, you'll notice only it is highlighted. Then both of these are highlighted. Then all 3 of these are highlighted. So it's important to note that you're selecting this, this, and this independently. All right, those are our 3 spine controls for Norman here. So there's a couple things we want to do with the spine. One is we need to counterbalance in here, and let me just kind of talk about this for one moment. So as we're walking, you can see the angle of the arms is representative of the hips, and what we really want to have happen here is basically a little bit, I'll just use a quick tool for this. So if you look, this is our angle. Now we want our upper body or our shoulder line to follow this angle, and then the head will balance out somewhat like this. Back in the day when we would do this in 2D, you would basically kind of draw these in very lightly just to kind of make sure that you're generating a realistic walk cycle. Or not necessarily realistic, but just adjusting the spine properly. All right, so we'll grab all 3 spine controls here. We're going to bring it to the opposite side, and we want to also establish which arm is going to be forward here, which is going to be the right. So we're going to rotate that forward. Another common mistake I see quite often, believe it or not, is having the arm swing forward with the knee itself, and that's it's going to look a little bit funky. Unless you're doing it for a specific reason, I would avoid that. All right, and we'll zero out the rotational values here as well. I'm going to bring that shoulder down and bring that shoulder forward. Oops. You didn't see that. All right, so hips are up here, and then rotate the proper way. There we go. And then we'll hit S to set a key on that as well. Now you can get a lot smoother walk cycle out of this if you just go one at a time, and you can also create a little bit of overlap follow through action within the spine as well, depending on how exaggerated you're really trying to go. All right, so for the forward and back motion of this as well, typically what I'll do is just establish this is our down. You want to take into consideration the overall emotional state of the character, and if I were to go downward, it might just seem like a little bit melancholy, that kind of thing. If I go up and poke the chest out, we're a little bit more into a happy walk cycle, if you will. So I'm going to go with the back route because I'm in a happy mood here, and we're going to copy paste because we updated frame 1. Frame 24 as well will be back, and we've updated them. So now we got this nice chest out walk cycle going, and it's looking pretty nice. So a couple other things we can apply here. So as the character is going up and then coming back down between 1 and 24 here, we have two opportunities to apply a little overlap follow through. So on frame 8 and 16 really, we're going to just bring him down a little bit. If you're going up, you're moving down, and if you're coming back down, you're going to go up. Really, the secret of creating overlap and follow through action is you're always doing the opposite of what the center of gravity is going to be doing, or the parent or master control of that hierarchy is doing. So we're all guided by the hips. Our hips are controlling our spine. So again, we're starting down and we're going up. So at 32, we'll bring him down a little bit, and at 40, up a little bit. There we go. And could have gone a little bit more subtle with it, but hopefully you get the idea from that. All right, and let's adjust the neck. And for this, we're just gonna basically like straighten him out. 1 and last are the same. 24. Straighten them out, and we'll go to the head control as well. Same kind of thing. You could apply a lot of overlap follow through to this appendage depending on how cartoony and stylized you really want to go. I'm going to just stay a little bit more subtle right now, and there we go for the side to side. And same kind of thing for the front to back motion. It's all going to be delegated by the hips. So right here we'll grab the head, neck control, both of them at the same time, just to cheat and speed up a little bit. As we're going up, we're going to bring it down a little bit, and as we're going down, we're going to go up. Same thing over here at 32, and just try and be quick for you guys so you're not wasting too much time, and you can go and do this yourselves. Alright, so feel free to add your own style to it as well, or exaggerate it even more. We'll get a little bit of a pop, but that's because we're seeing 1 and 48 at the same time. If you want to get a better idea or sense of how the walk cycle is really going to look at the end, we'll go with 47 frames, hit play, and you'll get a better idea. But you can see that little jerkiness right whenever it starts over. Again, it's a very small thing, but what we're doing is we're seeing the same frame twice in our 24 frames per second playback there. So there we go. All right, let's get into the arms. So let's start with our left arm. We'll bring it down by the side. And for this, I'm gonna just get it in a general position. And right here in the clavicle, let's bring that shoulder back a little bit more. His chest is poking out, so I wanna over exaggerate that a bit more. So we'll key both. 1 and last are the same. And then we'll go to 24. With the clavicle, I'll just bring this forward now. And we'll swing the arm forward. You want to make sure you're swinging it on the correct axis, the same axis you swung it on before. And there's a nice little arm motion thus far, with a little bit of clavicle action in there as well. Beautiful. All right, let's go ahead into the elbow next. So here, I'm just going to give a slight bend to the elbow. 1 and last are the same. 24, we'll bend it forward. There we go. And then we'll go to the wrist. And once we're done with the wrist, we'll start applying some overlap follow through. So the wrist, same thing, just going in the opposite direction. And then 24, we'll bend it forward on the same axis once again. Okay. All right, and then here is the overlap follow through, similar to what we did in the spine earlier. So we're going forward here. We really only need one here. And I'll just try and find right around the pass, and you're going to extend the elbow. Again, inertia is coming, so it's pushing against. And as we're going back, same kind of thing here. We'll go forward. And just feeling out in our loop where that needs to be placed. There we go. And the wrists and fingers and things like that, that's where this really shines the most. So I'm going to try and really push this even further for you guys. So, wow. That's a bit exaggerated, but to get the point across. And then as we're coming back, right here. And the more you do that, the more overlap follow through, the happier the character is going to feel. And we're still seeing that little bit of pop, obviously, because of 48, but that's a decent enough start for our arm rotational values. There we go. So just going to check our shoulder one more again. Maybe exaggerate this a little bit more. Copy one, update last. There we go. A little bit more of a swing. All right, let's go to the opposite side now and take care of this one. And this one, I'm going to do a little bit different so you know how to, of course, adjust this on your own. But for this, well, let's imagine we're interacting with something. I don't know, he's carrying a sword or he has a briefcase or whatever you want. We're going to take this EX control and change it to a value of 1. It's also just showing you, like, you can have one hand, you know, basically an FK, one in IK, or vice versa. There's also a script that comes with Norman that will allow you to basically switch from IK to FK. But for this, not really necessary. And I think I'll just put his hand up on his hip here. All right, we'll grab the digits. Base, mid, and tip. And just a little bit of a bend there. And then the elbow really needs to come out, right? It's a little too far back. There we go. Cool. Now, what's going to happen with the IK is it's going to essentially stay in its location of where you actually just placed it. So if you hit play, you'll notice that it sticks to that location. That's the benefit, also caveat to IK controls. So what we'll do is we'll take it, shift select our cog here because it's the closest control in relationship to its location. We're going to hit P to parent it, and now we have our hand on our hip moving along with the rest of the character as he's walking. Cool, cool. All right, let's go into the face here for a moment as well and just talk about a couple little additional things you can do to make yours pop. This eye control, basically wherever it's placed, the eyes are going to stay locked on it. So I usually put it out in front of the character like so that they're constantly looking at the location they're walking in. And if it's too high or too low, you end up with your eyes basically rolling back into the head. And let's see, corners of the mouth for an example here. We'll do lips up and corners out, and then corners up. There we go. A little bit of a smile there. You can also adjust the brows. He's happy. So we'll go up with them. These guys too will have control over the lids. So upper lid up and down. There we go. I like that expression. And maybe just a little rotation to the jaw. You can also translate the jaw, but be careful when doing so. And there we go. Decent walk cycle with Norman and not too much time spent. 48 frames, we'll take that back down to 47. Hit play for you guys. Not too shabby. Alright, so one last thing I want to throw into this video for you guys really quick is the power of animation layers and what can be done with them. So you show this to the boss, you show this to your professor, and they say, hey, not bad, but change this, change that, update this, I want to see more of that. Causes you, to go back and redo a lot. What we could do is actually use our animation layers so that we can build on top of what we already have. All right, so I'm just going to hit save there, and we'll go to Anim, this Anim tab next to your display. And let's do this with, let's mess with the arm swing for a little bit. So I'm going to grab the shoulder elbow, and the wrist. And we'll create a brand new layer, and I'll call this just left arm. Oh, I hit caps lock there, sorry. Good enough. So that's the arm and everything on this layer. If you didn't have them selected previously and you've already created a layer, you just right click and add selected objects. And that way you know it's on there. Now you can see if we hit play, it still rotates, still does everything it was doing once before. But this time we don't see any ticks, we don't see any keyframes. That's because we're adding an additional layer. On the base animation, you'll see with these items selected that we have the keys 12, 24, 39, 40, all the way to 48 as well, of course. So those keys are still in existence there. So what we can actually do with this animation layer now for the LARM is take our shoulder and let's just over exaggerate the crap out of this thing. Let's go way back here, break his arm, and oops, I did that on the wrong keyframe, so let's just go ahead and cut those and paste them. I need to paste them on one as well. So there's our back swing, and then our forward swing. Let's go ahead, forward, everything, have them all selected currently, and then let's just go with the shoulder so everything gets a significant amount of rotation in that direction. All right, so look at that swing now. It's pretty large of a swing, but again, this is the beauty of the animation layers here. We can add on to what we already had. Now, maybe you went a little bit too much this time. It's like Boss Man says, hey, you know, I like the adjustment you made, but it's still too much for me. You can hit play here and dial back the weight. You can also keyframe the weight itself in order to adjust the amount. Let's say you want it at 1 for the front portion of the swing, but 0 for the back swing. You can adjust all of that just by hitting the K next to the weight right here. All right, let's take another look at 47 frames per second. Not too shabby, or sorry, 48 down to 47, so you're not seeing the duplicate frames. And let's set up a play blast. So the way I like to do my play blasts, quite simple. Let's just frame the character, nice 3/4 view. We'll go up to show and do none, show and do polygons. His tongue as well is a NURBS surface, so if you're doing facial animation, you want to make sure that you turn that on as well. From here, always good to go into the render viewport 2.0, and we're going to come down to the screen space ambient occlusion and enable that. And what that will do is give us some contact shadow. Now, if the shadowing bothers you, because these are duplicate specials, so their normals are facing, you know, there's an issue with this rendering system in here. You can elect to have it on or off. It also darkens the eyes. So, but this is great because you can see contact shadow. So you can elect to use that or not and adjust the amount so you get a little bit less. I mean, it's still there to a certain degree, but you can see a little bit of the contact shadow of the foot on the ground. All right, so you can play around with those values, but it'll give you a little bit nicer quality. And then we're going to go right click on our timeline into the play blast settings here. The quality we want 100 because maximum quality. We'll turn off show ornaments, render off screen. Let's see, save the file, and the scale will be 1. And then you would of course give it a name, so I'll just call this walk 1. And we'll hit play blast. And because we set our project and all that kind of good stuff too, it's going to go into our movies folder. So we have a collection of different clips we've been creating with them. And there's a pretty nice walk cycle. Not too shabby. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to try and end it here. Keep it nice and quick for you guys. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you guys would like to see. Planning on creating multiple how-to videos and animation related videos using Norman here, and hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one. Bye.